I was doing something. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Good morning. Hey, Ika. Right on time, sister. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Good morning. Allergy season. Isn't it awesome? Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Get It Right. I'm Ramona Phillips, your healthy mind strategist. Very grateful to be here on this program. My goal is to defeat trauma. Defeat trauma by defeating the mindsets that comes along with trauma from growing up in broken homes or family dysfunction or being abused in different abused in our relationships. We're going to deal with the anger, the frustration, the resentment, the fear, the thoughts that makes us depressed. Okay, so we're going to deal with that depression. We're going to deal with that anxiety. We're going to conquer those mindsets that sabotage us. Hey, Linda. Hey, Andrea. Hey, ladies. Welcome. Hey, Ika. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Ramona Phillips, your healthy mind strategist. Grateful to be here. Is it Wednesday again already? Is it Wednesday again already? I wasn't sure if you were going to make it today, Andrea. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, well, let me just talk a little bit about my story. You guys know that I grew up, in a very challenging family. My mom, first of all, let me tell you guys, my mom loved her children. My mom loved her children, but she had grew up in a lot of dysfunction. Her mother was mentally ill or sick at a very early age. She had a nervous breakdown. Back in those days, they called him a nervous breakdown. Welcome, welcome, welcome back by his blood, Tessa. Good, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. So my mom, she grew up, her dad was alcoholic, first of all. My grandmom, who I never met, which was my mother's mother, she had a nervous breakdown. So, back in those days, back like in the 50s, they called it nervous breakdowns. But anyway, so my mother's mother or my grandmother was placed in a mental institution when my mother was a little girl. And she was partially raised by my her grandfather or grandparents and a few other people in the family. But when she was very young, she decided to come to Philadelphia or come to New York or come to the city because she was from down south. A lot of people way from back in the 50s and 60s, they came from down south and they came to the city. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Pat. Thank you all for your support. So my mother came to the city. She had to put her age up because she was very young. So some things my mother didn't talk about. I know some things happened to her probably, when she was younger. In other words, I know my mother had been raped. She told me she had been raped and so on and so forth. And some of you guys know that my mom passed away in September. So my mom, just imagine my mother who had already been through all of this abuse, had already been through some very difficult times in her life trying to raise 7 children on her own. It was 8 of us, but she raised 7. So trying to raise 7 children on her own. So it was very difficult for her. And there were times when I was a little girl, I remember my mother being angry. I remember my mother being in relationships where she was being abused. She always fought back. She was a tough cookie. She fought back and she believed in getting revenge if she could. That's not my style. That's not my style. But she always fought back, but still she was just like this woman only about 5'2", and she was in these relationships, very dangerous relationships. So she suffered her own trauma. And as little children growing up, we suffered our own trauma. We were all traumatized by the experiences that was going on in our lives or going on when we were little kids. So let me tell you guys, let me read to you the definition of trauma, because some people don't know. Some people don't know. A lot of people probably, just about everybody walking around with some form of trauma, I'm sure. So trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. It's a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Example, like the death of a child or the death of a family member or loved one or someone very close to you. I remember my sister losing her best friend when she was very young. Also, the word trauma is used to describe experiences or situations that are emotionally painful, distressing, that overwhelm people's ability to cope, leaving them feeling powerless. So like I told you guys before, sometimes we feel powerless, but it doesn't mean we are powerless, but we're in that place at that moment where we feel powerless. And wherever we feel, and if we're going to think we're powerless, then that's how we're going to behave, as if there is no hope, which usually leads to depression, right? So trauma can also cause mental disabilities. Okay, disabilities causing a person to struggle with depression, fear, panic attacks, obsessive thoughts and behaviors. Obsessive thoughts and behaviors. You know, when your mind gets to running and you feel like you can't turn it off. Can't sleep. Over reasoning. Blaming is everybody's fault. It's everybody's fault. If so-and-so wouldn't have did this to me, I would be a better person. Anger, rage. So we tell our stories. We're all called, most of us are called to tell our stories one way or another, okay? The Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So God, you know, accepting Christ as Lord and Savior, we overcome, right? And we overcome by the word of our testimony. So it's important that we get to a place in our lives where we're comfortable enough to tell our testimonies. Everybody doesn't want to tell their testimonies. That's right. Trauma is huge, very huge. It is huge. It affects us every day, whether we know it or not. Do you know even going through a divorce is traumatic? We all have something that we had to deal with. Now, some people's lives are more traumatic than others. I can admit that, but it's not a contest. The bottom line is we've all been affected in some way. And believe it or not, there are times when we may still be acting out, or we may have some form of trigger that may trigger the anger. Maybe you're not as angry as you used to be before, but still that little trigger still comes up from time to time. It could be just about anything. You and I, we all have to learn what triggers us. Some people just get triggered just behind the fact that they feel like somebody disrespected them. That can be a trigger for them. Some people, because they grew up maybe in abusive situations, they have issues with people in authority. So they have to work on their issues with people in authority, not running from people in authority, not feeling so threatened by people in authority. Okay, so like I said, you know, I told you guys my dad was alcoholic. My dad was alcoholic, but thank God I can honestly say he wasn't the alcoholic that came home and beat my mom and all that. Actually, my mom and dad was together when they were teenagers. So my mom was like 17 when she had me. And my dad, I'm thinking my dad was around 19. I'm not sure, but I think he was a few years older. But my point is they broke up at a very early age. So I never lived with my dad. Only when I was like, a toddler. Only when I was a toddler. Okay, so thank God I don't have those memories. But I have the memories of my always feeling abandoned by my dad. So a lot of us, we grow up with abandonment issues because dad wasn't there, or because somebody wasn't there for us that we desperately or we really wanted them to be there. And with me being a young girl and seeing my mom abused and being and growing up in a broken home or dysfunctional family system, there were times when I was looking for my dad. I was the little girl that was like, come and get your daughter. Don't you hear what's going on? Come and get your child. You know how they be on TV? I'm coming to get custody of my daughter. You know, your imagination run wild. So I'm this little girl just wishing, hoping, come on, Dad. I know you hear what's going on. Come and get me. Come and get your daughter. But it never went down that way. Never went down that way. My dad was a very sick man. He was alcoholic for a reason. I don't know anything about his childhood. I am close to some of the relatives on my dad's side, and I can ask my aunt some questions. But the bottom line is, I don't know what happened to him. But I'll tell you this much: trauma was connected to it. Trauma was connected to it. A lot of times when you see people drinking and they're drugging, it's connected to trauma. When I was a teenager, I told you guys I was attacked in my home. I was attacked in my home at the age of 15. Now, that was like the icing on the cake compared to all the other stuff I had experienced in my childhood. Okay, we had already been in fires. I told you guys I had jumped out of a 2-story. I think I told you guys that. Jumped out of a window trying to protect my siblings. I was only like 7. Okay, trying to protect my mother who was being held at knife point. I was only like 11. Okay, I've been held at gunpoint with my mother, me, my sister, and my mother. I'm like 13. We're standing there. This man is holding a gun to us, and my mom is acting like a raving maniac. My mom was real psychological too. I think she was acting cray-cray because she knew he was gonna look at her and say, "You know what? You crazy. I ain't going. Let me get away from y'all. Let me get away from you." But the bottom line is, remember, I'm like 13 years old, and we're standing there, me and my sister, looking at each other, and it's like, oh my God. Now we had already been through so much already, so. You know what post-traumatic stress disorder is. So I know I was going through some symptoms like that. I was already hearing gunshots. I'm already hearing gunshots because we had already been through so much in those 60s, those 60s, growing up in those 60s. I was born in 61. But so we had already been through so much, seen so much. One night when I think I was like 11 or 12, I heard my mom screaming for help. So I guess everybody else didn't hear it. But anyway, I came downstairs. Her room is at the bottom of the steps. She's laying on the bed. She's been stabbed like 3 times. Her boyfriend she had broke up with him. He had actually broke in the house while we were asleep, waited for her in the dark, and that was his plan to murder her. And guess who finds her laying on the bed? I'm only like 12. Okay, so like I said, we had already been through so much already, okay, including my mom. So being attacked in my home, that was the icing on the cake, okay? So my point is, I used drugs. Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. I was drinking already at 14, okay? All right, I remember when Old English 800 came out. So we was drinking, not every day, all the time, walking around drunk, but we were teenagers, remember, so it was kind of fun to us. But the bottom line is we was trying to numb, my sister too, we were trying to numb the fear, the anger, the resentment, the feelings of sadness, the feelings of not feeling safe. Already drinking, and I was using drugs already at like 13, 14 years old. Because I was trying to numb the fear, trying to numb the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, trying to numb that feeling of not feeling safe all the time, most of the time, trying to numb that feeling. That's right, your way of escape. That was my way of escape. And looking for someone to love me, because we look for people to love us, and that makes us feel, it gives us that sort of false sense of security, looking for someone to love us. How did you overcome the drug, sis? I just stopped because I wasn't an addict. So I was an experimental drug user at a very young age, so I didn't have to although you guys know I went to rehab later, but I didn't even go to rehab in 1992, which was like 35 years later. I went to rehab, but it wasn't for drugs. I went to rehab because I was just so depressed. So I was so sad. I was struggling with codependency issues, and that also will cause the drinking and the drugging for some people. And some people turn to other things. Some people turn to food. Some people just have attitude issues, and they turn to controlling issues, or they have some other issues. Some people turn into workaholics. Anything can get out of balance. So sometimes the bottom line is we turn to things that gives us a false sense of security to help us feel safe the best way we can. We turn to people, places, and things. So yeah, I was one of those people that was so afraid to become an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic, because my mom's boyfriend was alcoholic. So that terrified me. Okay, so I had made up my mind at a very young age that I was not going to become an alcoholic, because I had made up I can see that I blame alcoholism for taking my dad away from me. So it was really easy for me to drink for a while and then stop for years. Just I ain't drinking no more. And then I got saved at a very early age too. So I had some wisdom. I noticed that I had some wisdom. So if I did things, I always felt really guilty. I always felt convicted. So I would just stop doing those things. I can hear the Holy Spirit saying, you know, you're going to get in trouble, blah, 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 blah. So I would stop doing those things. So to God be the glory, right? Okay, so today the topic is self-love. How are we loving ourselves? How are we loving ourselves? Do we tell ourselves and remind ourselves that we have great worth and value? Do we remind ourselves that although somebody else may have told us that we're not lovable in their own way, maybe they treated us as if we were not lovable. Maybe that's right. That's right, convicted. I felt convicted. I felt like I went from feeling guilt, shame, and condemnation a lot to just at some point being convicted. And I'm using the word convicted now, but to tell you the truth, think about it. I didn't know what being convicted was. Back then, it was guilt, shame, and condemnation. And a lot of us still struggle with guilt, shame, and condemnation. And it gets us stuck in being religious because we think we're supposed to be perfect. And everything's supposed to be like this, and everybody's supposed to be like this. That also is a false sense of security, making ourselves feel like everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. I have to be perfect. Everybody else has to be perfect. Whoever's not perfect, something's wrong with them, and then we get to judging and things like that. That's another way of feeling insecure. We judge everything. I apologize if it looked like I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm trying to make some valid points. Welcome, Kasika. Welcome, everybody. So what happens is we judge everything. You know why? Because we're constantly judging ourselves. We're judging other people, how they look, how they're dressed, how they did it. And because we're constantly judging ourselves, because there's something there that's telling us that we have to be perfect. Some mindset, actually. Because it's not from God. So it's some mindset from our childhood or something that tells us we had to be perfect. And that can come from trauma as well. Right? Hi, sis. Hi, sweetie. So let me breathe for a minute. Let me breathe. Okay, so the topic is self-love today. So like I said, some of us were treated as if we weren't lovable. And right in the midst of looking to be loved, right? Right in the middle of that. We wanted to be loved so much, but yet we still were making poor decisions on how to love ourselves, because many of us grew up not realizing that we were supposed to love ourselves. Nobody taught us that we had. Many of us grew up being taught that. Nobody told us, sat us down and said, you have great worth and value. Most of us grew up in survival mindsets. It was all about survival. Fight or flight. Fight or flight. Fight or flight. Do I need to fight this time, or do I need to take flight? Yeah. So it's our job to make sure that we are loving ourselves. And, it took me, for many years, I didn't know I was supposed to love myself. I was an adult. I was like, I got to love myself. What? So remember, most of us grew up thinking that we had to find someone to love us. And here we are. God put the ball in our court. I was kind of glad when I realized the ball was in my court. Yeah, you was a fighter. Exactly, Linda. I feel you, girl. I was the oldest of all of the 6 siblings. 6 little siblings. Ridiculous. Ugh. Little sister come in. She slapped me. Where she at? Let's go. Slap her back. That's what I had to do. Now here come a big sister. Oh, God, here we go. This chick bigger than me. Oh, Lord. I need something. I need a bottle or something. I grew up in the city, y'all. But anyway. So the bottom line is it's very important that we take responsibility for taking care of ourselves. And I was happy, actually, when I did get some help in 1992, and I realized that I had choices, because I wasn't raised that way. I didn't feel like I had choices. My mom was very kind of domineering and strict, cuss us out. I grew up in them 60s. So, my mindset was not like that. I did have some issues with authority figures because of my mom's anger. So I love my mom dearly. We had a good relationship. growing up and everything. And my mom did not allow us to fight each other. There's 7 of us. She did not allow us to fight each other, praise God. Although every now and then, but, nothing major because she didn't allow us to fight. So, and that was a good thing because I did the same thing with my kids. I never allowed them to fight. Although they had a moment here and there, but I never allowed my kids to fight. I don't think you should ever allow your children to fight. Okay. So anyway, we are lovable. Although many times we may have felt like we were not lovable. But like I said, I was grateful when I found out the ball was in my court and that I have choices. So guys, we have to remember that we have choices. We don't look for other people to make us happy. We don't look for other people to make us feel like we are lovable. We have to tell ourselves we're lovable. That's right, Linda. That's right. That's right, Andrea. We have to remind ourselves that we are lovable. People come out of relationships, they get divorced or whatever the case may be, and all of a sudden they feel like he didn't want me, she didn't want me. Suppose if they didn't want you no more, does that mean you're not lovable? We're still lovable. We're still lovable. That does not take, a failed relationship does not take away your worth and value. It's the way we process it. It's the way we think about it. And then we tell our own selves that we're not lovable. So that's a traumatic, that's from going from trauma, we find ourselves talking to ourselves in a negative way. And we're self-sabotaging our own selves. That's right, by the way we talk to ourselves. So it's important that we're mindful of what we're saying to ourselves. Don't call yourself stupid. Some people call themselves stupid. Some people say it out loud. And then some people hold it in and suppress it. And they just feel stupid. But the more we suppress those feelings, the worse we behave, the worse we feel. So remember I told you guys about doing that self-check? It's important that we check ourselves. We need to check ourselves. If we don't check ourselves and we start acting out and somebody else check us, that makes us feel even more uncomfortable, and then we're embarrassed. Because depending on the severity of that acting out thing, and sometimes it's just your friend. Sometimes it's your pastor. Sometimes it's your husband. Sometimes it's your wife. They check you because we're allowed to judge the behavior. We're not allowed to judge the person as if the person has no worth and value because they did something that was sinful or wrong, or they were behaving the wrong way. We don't have no right to judge them as if we're their God, but we have the right to judge the behavior if it's hurting us. Especially if we know it's hurting us. Okay? So just, that's a little, remember that. I want you to remember that because it's so important to remember that because there is a difference. There is a difference. We are not anybody's judge and jury, but we can judge the person's behavior. I had to judge my husband's behavior. You're cheating. You're lying. I can't trust you. This is not working. That behavior is not working. That's not, people can't stay married like that. So I judged the behavior and I sat him down and I said, this is not working and I need you to leave. It took a long time for me to get to that point. But I finally got to that point some years ago. That's my first husband, the one that passed away. Anyway, so we are lovable. Let me read something to you guys. From from the courage to change. From the language of letting go. From the language of letting go. TraumaDefeated.com. That's my website. Self-love. I'm going to read a page on self-love, okay? I woke up this morning and I had a hard time for a while, said one recovering man. And then I realized it was because I wasn't liking myself very much. So this man most likely was kind of new in recovery, but he was getting that self-awareness that he didn't like himself very much. And a lot of people don't like themselves very much. Princess was talking about degrees and everything. It's people that got degrees in everything and still struggle with liking themselves. And then what they do is thank you, Andrea. What they do is they get their self-worth out of what it is that they accomplish or what it is that they do. And that's not God's will. That's not God's will. God wants us to remember that we have great worth and value in Him, and in Him only. So anyway, the man says Then I realized it was because I wasn't liking myself very much. So drop the judgment on yourselves. Nobody has it all together. Recovering people often say, I just don't like myself. When will I start liking myself? And the answer is, you can start right now. Be honest with yourself. Do those self-checks. I know we can dress up real good on the outside and we just do. We're just walking around doing, but that doesn't mean you like yourself. We have to be mindful. That goes back to what are we saying to ourselves? How do we treat ourselves? We can learn to be gentle, loving, and nurturing with ourselves. Of all of the behaviors we're striving to attain, loving ourselves may be the most difficult and the most important, and that's because of the trauma that we've suffered. If we are habitually harsh and critical toward others, learning to be gentle with ourselves may require dedicated effort. So you're used to having an attitude, snapping at people, telling people off, cussing people out, or whatever the case may be. Taking your frustration and anger out on others. So that makes it pretty hard to be loving to yourself, right? Right? And then the Bible tells us that we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. So a lot of people are struggling with loving themselves. So, of course, they're struggling with treating people with love and respect and try not to judge them and condemn them, right? So it goes back to us loving ourselves. How are we treating ourselves? Are you merciful toward your own self when you make a mistake? Or you automatically start condemning yourself? But what a valuable venture. What a valuable venture. By not liking ourselves, we may be perpetuating the discounting neglect or abuse we received in childhood from the important people in our lives. We didn't like what happened then, but find ourselves copying those who mistreated us by treating ourselves poorly. We can stop the pattern. It's a pattern. In 1992, I realized that I had choices and I can stop the pattern or break the cycle. We can begin giving ourselves the loving, respectful treatment we deserve. We can start doing that. Take a break when you need a break. Treat yourself to a vacation, a spa trip. Do some things for yourself. Something small. I love going to the movies. I can go by myself. I don't care. I'll go to the movies. Instead of criticizing ourselves, we can tell ourselves we performed well enough. So do you celebrate yourself when you get it done? When you do what you know you needed to do? It could be something small. You finally cleaned out the closet. You did the dishes. Whatever it was. I'm not talking about perfectionism, but some things, maybe you've been procrastinating or putting off. When you finally get it done, do you pat yourself on the back? You go, girl, you got it done. You go, guy, or whatever. Just celebrate yourself. Well, I finally got that done. High five yourself. We can wake up in the morning and tell ourselves we deserve to have a good day. We deserve a good day. So wake up and thank God for each day. And speak what you want your day to look like. When in the process of it all, make sure you're being teachable. Be teachable along the way. God does not want us full of worry and anxiety. Thank you, Linda, for putting up those links. We can make a commitment to take good care of ourselves throughout the day. We can make a commitment to take good care of ourselves throughout the day. Drink your water. I love drinking water. Drink the water. I know you don't want the vegetables sometimes, but our body needs vegetables. Cook the broccoli. Take a walk. Do a workout video. Hit the gym. We have to make sure that we're making those choices to take care of ourselves, especially those of us who are so used to taking care of everybody else. Do for ourselves, well, that's right, what we often look for others to do. Exactly. And we can do for ourselves what we're looking sometimes for others to do. We can recognize that we're deserving of love. We are deserving of love. Self-care, that's right, Andrea, is very important. We can do loving things for ourselves. Do loving things for yourself. I remember when I was little, we couldn't afford a lot when my birthday came. I was blessed if I, got anything. So I remember and then, when you're young, you be kind of sad about that, especially when you're a teenager. But I remember telling myself, when I get old enough, I'm going to always treat myself good on my birthday. And I always do. we can do loving things for ourselves. We can love other people and let them love us. It's okay. Other people have hurt you, but now it's time for you to heal and let other people love you back. Let other people love you back. Don't be so afraid of people. God will give us discernment. He gives us discernment. We do have to be wise. We do have to be wise about people and friendships and getting to know people. Because I struggle. That's why be your own best friend. I agree. I do not have a best friend. My best friend is me. Okay? I agree. That works better for me. And to me, when you put titles on people like that, there's a certain expectation that's there. And then when they don't meet that expectation, then how do you treat them? How do we treat them? Those people that we call our besties, our best friends. But you're my best friends. And some people use that best friend to manipulate and control. So I just choose not to have a best friend. You know, I have good friends, I have associates, and I have good friends. That works for me. Thank you. You're welcome. People who truly love themselves do not become destructively self-centered. I know, thinking about ourselves all the time, all the time. They do not abuse others. They do not abuse others. They do not stop growing and changing. So it's important that we are always teachable, and stop blaming everything on everybody else, and always look for the lesson. Even if the person has to do their own self-check, we have to still make sure we're checking ourselves to make sure we responded or we handled that situation, and and in a wise way, in a loving way, in a righteous way. People who love themselves well learn to love others well too. They continually grow into healthier people. They continually grow into healthier people. So none of us have it all together. We have to stay teachable and keep growing and look for the lessons in every experience that we go through. Thank you, Andrea. Learning that their love was appropriately placed. We want to make sure our love is appropriately placed, because sometimes we love people that don't appreciate us, that'll walk over top of us. So we need God to give us that wisdom and that discernment to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and our relationships as well, okay? Remember, the number one relationship must be with God. The number two, it must be with yourself. So today, I will love myself. If I get caught in the old pattern of not liking myself, I will find a way to get out, okay? So I'm just going to wrap it up real quick. It's very important that when we're doing those pay attention to how you feel, like I say, because you may have to change the way you think. Because remember this, sometimes when we're stressed out, some of those old behaviors start creeping back up on us. That's right. Some of those old, thank you, Andrea, some of those old behaviors, those of us who are getting healthier, some of those old behaviors, controlling, or some of that anger, you might be quick to get angry or whatever. So pay attention to yourself, especially when you're stressed, especially when things are going on in your life and that's difficult. Pay attention, because sometimes those old self-sabotaging behaviors start creeping back up on you, or creeping back up on us, or we start looking for love in the wrong places, or people, places, and things. Something that you think is not a big thing, like gluttony, something that we think that's not a big thing. We begin to look for love and all of that comfort, or that feeling of safety, So it's very important, once again, that we make sure that we're checking ourselves, that we're aware of what's going on with us, okay? Give God the glory. Throw your hands up. Throw your hands up. Give God the glory. Surrender. Give it to Him. Give Him the relationships. Give Him the issues. Give Him everything. Just give it to Him. And remember that God does not condemn you. That God loves you with an everlasting love. He says that we're fearfully, wonderfully, and marvelously made. He says that we are the apple of His eye. He says that we are more than conquerors. Only God can fill any void. That's right, sister girl. Only God can fill any void. Any void. That's right. Right, Linda? Only God can fill any void. When you're not feeling at peace, take it to God first. Take it to God first. If God wants you to talk to somebody or do anything else, He'll know. Don't get so caught up in talking to God that you're afraid you feel like you can't, talk to somebody that can encourage you, or watch Sister Tribe Radio TV. Listen to some good music, but make sure you're doing loving things for yourself, okay? Because you deserve it. You deserve it. You've been through so much as it is. You deserve it. Who is the author of the book you read from, Ramona? Melody Beattie. Melody Beattie. She's on Amazon. Her books are awesome. She has some awesome books. Anyway, so I'm Ramona Phillips. I got to go. I went over my time. I'm Ramona Phillips, your healthy mind strategist. TraumaDefeated.com is my website. It is my pleasure to serve you ladies today. Thank you for being here. I love you. Join World Changers Tribe, bit.ly. Thank you, Cedar. Thank you for putting up those links. B-E-A-T-T-Y. B-E-A-T-T-Y. I'm sorry, B-E-A-T-T-I-E. B-E-A-T-T-I-E. Melody, M-E-L-O-D-Y. Did you get it? All right. Thank you, ladies. I'll see you guys soon, and I'll be back on Get It Right. So thank you for joining me on Get It Right, because we're getting our mindsets right. We're getting our attitudes right. We're learning how to take better care of ourselves, loving God, loving others. Also, I have a radio program on FM HDMS radio.net every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Eastern Standard Time. I'm Ramona Phillips, your healthy mind strategist. I'll be back. I will be back on Wednesday, 9 CST, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll talk to you ladies later. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Bye-bye.